Welcome back, everyone. It is I, the Dumble, whose door is always open. Gandalf without the gray or the white, because I'm all black. Jordan LaForge, captaining this enterprise. I am your man, Left Eye Ego. And I am joined by my sun, moon, and stars, my Wonder Woman, my Shiro. How are you doing?
You're so extra.
Yes, I'm extra, but she married me. She encourages me being extra.
I do.
But guys, pardon the clothing. We just got back from date night, but we could not wait to review a movie we've been waiting months to watch since the announcement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In the spirit of being spooky season, we saw The Nun Part 2. Pretty decent movie. You know, we have a few issues with it, generally speaking, but actually it was pretty good. But we're going to be giving you our review of this movie. And we don't do the 1 to 5 star crap over here. We do 1 to 5 egos. Yes, honey. 1 to 5 of me. And I had to actually bring along this year for this one because we honestly love the horror genre of movies. Or at least I love watching them with you.
Yeah, I think that's better suited.
That's fair. I watch them so I can actually go to sleep and know that someone's right there. So if I hear something creak open, hey, you hear that? Because I need to make sure that I hear that too.
So you're just out here using me in these streets.
Yes. So we are going to be rating the movie on 4 parts. The casting, plot, the pacing, and the scare factor. All right, so with that, let's get into it. First thing we're going to do is just give you a general synopsis of the movie itself. So Nun 2 synopsis is 1956, France. A priest is murdered. An evil is spreading. The sequel of the worldwide smash hit follows Sister Irene as she once again comes face to face with Valak, the demon nun. All right, so if we're going to go based off of the casting, I'm actually going to give it 4 egos. I'll read to you who was actually in it. Then I'll tell you actually where you might have seen them from.
That would be helpful because you know
yes,
me.
I know. I knew when I was looking at the cast, I said, I need to tell her what other movie they were in so she can go, oh, yeah, I remember that person. Why don't you just say that? Anyway, we had Thaisa Farmiga as Sister Irene. There was Bonnie Aarons as the demon nun. We had Storm Reed as Deborah. Jonas Bloquet as Maurice, and we had Anna Popplewell as Kate. So in terms of the characters themselves, Thaisa was Sister Irene. She was actually in the Nun Part 1. She survived and goes on to the second one. You'll remember Jonas Bloquet as Maurice because, again, if you've seen the first one, you know that at the end, Valak, the demon nun, actually goes into Maurice. And they wind up leaving the, I guess it was the church that way. So those are the 2 characters that are returning for this movie. The new people are Deborah, who kind of serves as kind of a partner of sorts to Sister Irene. And I believe Anna Popplewell kind of plays the love interest to Maurice. So, overall, I'm going to give it 4 egos because Thaisa Farmiga didn't miss a beat picking up his Sister Irene. From the sequel. She was vulnerable and compassionate, even though she was in a very traumatic situation. You can actually see that on her face. You would think that someone that had been through that would either be very cocky or completely desiring to be isolated. And she was kind of there, but she kind of kept her distance because she didn't really want anyone to know what she'd been through.
Right.
Bonnie Aarons as the demon nun. Fantastic. I mean, for how little she spoke, she really did take up space in the movie.
Did she speak at all?
No. Oh, I'm saying the thing is like I saw her, and I was pointing to you like, hey, you see that? You see that? I thought she did a really good job, and to be honest, her face really does look like that. There weren't a lot of prosthetics that had to be put on there.
It's just so they just painted her face white.
Yes, that's a distinctive face.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean
Can you show me what she looks like normally?
Yeah, let me show you what she looks like normally.
Because, I mean, literally...
That's her.
Oh.
Yeah, that's not a lot of extra stuff.
Okay.
Right, and so I said, we checked and looked up some interesting news about it because she's actually suing Warner Brothers right now because she allegedly hadn't been paid for merchandising of her, for her portrayal as Valak. But with the face that distinctive, going to be hard to replace her if, in fact, she's not able to come to agreement and be featured in The Nun 3, which it looks like they're probably going to be wind up making. In the movie they had Jonas Bloquet, who played Maurice, and Anna Popplewell, who played Kate. They had a kind of a decent will they or won't they? What? Well,
I don't think Kate added anything to the story. It was more about the little girl.
Yeah, but she was to me she was the hook for the will they won't they. Really?
I get they played that angle, but like I don't feel like she served any purpose in this movie.
Really? I thought it worked because it was more of like Maurice is kind of trying to be like the guy that he did a very good job of trying to be the friendly face that was hiding a dark secret. Yeah. I mean, that's my take on it. What do you give the casting choice in terms of your egos?
I guess a 4.
Okay.
And I'll just say that because I don't think Kate added anything to this story. I thought that Irene's sidekick is that Deborah.
Yes.
I thought she did a pretty good job in the sense of not being overly like, oh my gosh, I found my faith. They always put that in those movies. But Kate, for me, really didn't serve a purpose. I mean, that little girl could have been an orphan. It could have still been a similar story.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
I thought it was an attempt to use her as an emotional anchor for him. Because it'd be weird if it was
She offered him nothing. It was the little girl that he was connected with. Like, he was like, ooh, that lady's pretty, but literally all they did was give each other side-eye.
That's what I mean. The will they or won't they? No, it wasn't enough. I think it was her name was Caitlin Rose Downey. I think that was the little girl. Sophie, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I will give you this. So, honey, I will actually tell you where you've seen these people before.
Okay.
Because you've seen most of these people.
Shouldn't you have done that before I rated these people?
No, because I wanted your honest opinion before I wanted you to see how it impacted them. Okay. You know who Sister Irene is, right?
Who I recognize her.
American Horror Story.
Oh, yeah, like in the Louisiana one. I like her.
Yes.
I like her in general.
Yes, she did a really good job. I was like, wow, I really could not tell that was her. But I think that's the good thing about American Horror Story is they've been able to play different people so well that when you see them in a movie, you're like, who is that person? You're like, oh, you've been in American Horror Story and you've got some acting chops. Bonnie Aarons, that was the demon nun. I think she was in Annabelle Creation, Conjuring series.
As what? A scary person?
Well, I mean, in the Conjuring, she was Valak, the demon. Remember in the third one where she reached behind the wall when she was painting and then ran at people?
Oh, yeah.
That's still her. I will say, you remember Storm Reed, Missing.
What do you mean Missing?
The movie Missing. When her mom goes missing.
That's the girl?
That's her.
Is it really?
That is her. That's why we like her.
She did a great job.
She did a really good job.
Still similar characters now that you say that.
Right.
Similar characters, but
she still winds up being the same person.
I think she did a good job.
Yes, I actually kind of like that. So next we're going to be moving on to the plot. I will say I will give the plot for trying 4 egos, okay?
For trying what? To be
because I mean, you're undermining my entire review right now. No, I appreciate having you here as kind of the foil on this one. I mean, I like the fact because I like a mystery.
Okay.
So anytime you can really weave in religious history that isn't particularly canon to either Catholicism or Christianity, a good character backstory because we didn't know a lot about Sister Irene from the first one. Just that she was in the process of becoming a nun and taking on her final vows. And I like the way they weaved into the landscapes and the fact that it's 1950s Europe instead of making everything up to date and technological and everything like that. Essentially, the plot revolves around finding the motives as to why the demon nun Valak is actually returned and following a string of murders in like pretty much holy religious areas like temples and churches and things like that.
Well, almost like a serial killer. The same killings that happened before
are happening again. Yeah, that's what I liked about it. It wound up kind of being a mystery thriller with horror elements mixed in between. I think I like the fact that we kind of traveled with Sister Irene to these different locations and trying to pick up the clues along with her. You know, especially when they're doing flashbacks about her own past, because we really weren't given a lot about it then. The only reason I didn't give it 5 egos is because of the way that they introduced what is her name, Deborah, in the plot. So like, how does a Black American wind up in France in 1956?
Yeah.
They kind of say like, hey, it was these circumstances that led me to it, and it involves the war, but still, it didn't necessarily make sense unless you say like, hey, my father got stationed here and he just decided to stay. And when I was old enough, he shipped me to a nunnery. That's the only reason to give it 5 egos, because they had a hard time explaining her reason for being there. But the effect was so that she gets to be Sister Irene from the first one.
Yes.
Someone to help out and to watch what's happening, as to be like the documentarian and to be a sounding board for Sister Irene. Otherwise, she's just talking to herself, and that would be kind of weird. I don't know how you could do that solo without talking to someone. She spends most of the movie by herself. The other thing was that at the end of, we know what happens at the end of this one, right?
Yes.
Without saying it. At the end of the first Nun, there was the end credit scene where there's a class that's going on in like 1976, right? Guess who's being exorcised 20 years after the Nun Part 1? Maurice. Right. It's a plot hole, right?
Oh.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay.
So you're like, well, there was the way that this movie Part 2 ended seems to contradict what happens at the end of the Nun Part 1. So it'd be interesting to see how they wrap that up, or if they're going to try to tie back to it, because otherwise.
But does it though? So you're saying that at the end of 1, they show Maurice being exorcised?
Yes, and it's on camera.
20 years later.
After the Nun.
So is Nun 2 in the middle of this?
I don't know, but
1956.
Right, but it's 1976 is when they're showing that video. And there was no recording of Maurice trying to be exorcised in Part 1.
Because I don't know if you caught it at the end of 2, the look that was exchanged between Irene and Maurice. It wasn't a look exchanged. It was the look on Sister Irene's face. It was almost like she sensed.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't catch that?
I did not.
Because when they said goodbye, she kind of tilted her head and had like a confused face on. Like she said, like the first time she didn't sense that Valak went into Maurice because he saved her. They're like parting ways and there's all this sentiment. But this one, as they're parting, there's not a lot of dialogue between them.
Yeah.
But the way he says goodbye or something, she sort of tilts her head and makes a face like that was odd.
Damn, babe, I did not catch it. That's why that's why you're here. There you go. I did not catch that. I thought I was just like, I release you. You're free to, be whole again. Huh.
Yeah, it was very subtle, and I'm wondering, based on, I didn't remember that part, what you said about the exorcism.
Right.
Maybe that's their way of leading to it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. Again, guys, that might have been a light spoiler for the movie, but I mean, if you've watched the Conjuring series or the Annabelle series, they tend to all generally end the same way. But I think that was something that confused both of us in terms of the ending and what they'd shown us previously. Honey, what do you give the plot?
A 3.
Okay, go on.
3 egos. I thought it was very classical, and especially what they did with Sister Deborah, right? Like, they had to have someone who's questioning their faith, and they did so through her. But at the same time, like you pointed out, it's kind of confusing, like how she got there. And also it seems like Sister Irene is kind of like her protector and her mentor, which is okay, because I think in any exorcist movie we see there's usually that dynamic. So kind of classical there. I the history and the fact that you discover what you discover as she's trying to rid this demon is interesting to me, that they didn't discover that or understand that in the first one. And I guess that for me, that the reason why, how do you say it, Valak was in the first one seems completely different from why they're in the second one. Like they made it seem like this whole time Valak had been searching for that specific
item,
but really it was different.
That's fair.
So for me, it's kind of 3, and then like I said, that Kate, them trying to put in the will they, won't they, I found it unnecessary. I thought his connection with the little girl was strong enough. And that storyline there was strong enough to make him like have the heart and still be the good guy who's hiding this dark secret, which I don't even know if he knew the secret.
He did not.
Okay.
He did not, no. So that was a thing. That's actually pretty decent. I understand what you're saying on that one. It does make sense. I mean, particularly the plot does kind of revolve around there's a specific item that Valak is looking for, and have to figure out what it is while Valak is searching for it. But I can see what you mean by that. You know, maybe they didn't need Kate because they already had the headmistress. I think that was there. That was technically the only adult you needed. As far as the pacing, guys, this movie is an hour and 50 minutes. For an hour and a half, the pacing was a 2.
True statement. I thought I was gonna fall asleep.
Yo. It's great that they interspersed great landscapes. It was a good timepiece. There was history. There was fact finding. There was mystery. There was a thrilling part at some point. But good Lord, sloshing through all that was very difficult. Do not watch this movie after 7:30 on a weekday or after 5:30 on a weekend. You will fall asleep. Okay. However, the last 20 minutes, the pacing went up to a 4. They tried to wrap everything up as quickly as they could with about as much action so that you stayed awake. Just they spent so much time laying the groundwork and explaining the characters, their relationships to one another.
Even trying to find where this thing was at. I feel like in the first one, they didn't have to find where it was at. They just
knew where it was happening.
So it took them so long to get to that point, and then they had to spend time figuring out who was possessed, and it seemed like a little much.
So what do you give it then for pacing?
I mean, overall, I'm not going to do like you did. Okay. I'll give it in the middle a 3, maybe 2.5. Like, because a better part of the movie was slow. Yes. And it's not like there's these major dialogues that are happening, so it's hard to keep your attention because
it just
you're just almost like it's almost like filler for.
That's fair.
An hour and a half.
It is. I can see what you mean. It was just, we have to go here. We have to backtrack to go back forward. And you're just like, well, we already saw it happen. So we got to have you go back to find out what we saw happen. And then you got to figure it out. But you find a clue that just keeps me interested from like just checking out for that entire scene because we already saw what happened.
And maybe even to go back to the plot and it affected the pacing. I don't know if you noticed, like, I don't recall this in the first one, but for Sister Irene, they almost started sending her signs or like she was clairvoyant almost, or like signs or clairvoyant. I don't know which one you want to go with, but it was, did we need that?
So this is the thing. I will say that because they tried to give you kind of a surprise for Sister Irene, they were trying to do a lot of breadcrumbing. The only problem is the fact that because we weren't given a sufficient backstory for her in the first one, they tried to really push her history, and it would seem out of place.
Oh, that's right.
So because in the last 10 minutes, I said, "Oh, they're gonna make her do that," and you're like, "How did I?" So that's what they've been trying to tell us
the whole time.
Because it was so out of place and we didn't know. We're like, "Why are you showing me this?" But they kind of have a good surprise for Sister Irene. Helps make things make sense, and if they continue making more of the nun movies, she's the nun right at that point. So I guess the last thing is the scare factor. I really, really like what's happening with new horror with long exposure shots, not just cheap jump scares.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm gonna give it a 4. I remember there's one particular scene at it's actually the beginning. It's dead quiet for a solid 6 minutes. Remember that? There's the boy that goes down to get the wine for the priest.
Yeah, yeah.
That entire
the
entire first scene is like 5.5, almost 5 minutes of just quiet, zero dialogue, and it makes it so eerie. You could hear a pin drop in the audience, and you're not quite sure what's going to happen. And it's these long, drawn out scenes of silence. For, ironically, someone with hearing loss, that's deafening. I'm looking at this closed captioning screen because I don't hear anything, and I'm like, okay, nothing's happening. Okay, nothing's happening. Oh, something happened. Oh, I see it now too. Something did happen. Like, what do you think in terms of the scary factor?
I thought this one was lacking.
Okay.
I would almost give it a 2.
So I'm a punk. Okay.
No, I just I felt like, especially when the pace picked up and they were sort of fighting the demon.
Mm-hmm. It was trying to make up for all the slow.
Yeah, it was trying to make up for all the slow. And even at the end there, that stuff wasn't scary to me. It seemed like the demon had all this power, which they normally do, but I didn't see the strength
expression
in the nuns
at
all, even with the power of Christ and this and that. Like, so those beginning scenes were that first scene. I thought that was well done. That's really good, right? Yeah. Was it a little long?
Overdone?
Yes. But I think that was a good piece. But I don't think they carried that throughout
the movie. It was just scenes of terror.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I saw something, but it didn't really harm me. So maybe I'm just tripping or something like that.
Yeah, and that animal thing.
The goat. That was. I will say I wanted to know what the point of the goat was.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. But to your point, it was terror, but not frightening.
Well, and even that, though, is almost like a plot hole because you have Valak, the demon, who is a nun. What is this goat thing?
That's fair.
Right?
That's fair.
I get they try to explain it in the movie, and I won't go into it, but
it kind of...
They weren't really working together. It was just like this distraction to give you some scares.
To separate the girls from the nun and Valak. I see what you mean.
And I felt like they used the goat to give you the scary factor because it was kind of like running around and scaring the kids. But when it came to fighting the demon, it wasn't really like a scary factor. It was, they were literally almost fighting, duking it out. And at some point you're like, in the like Bible and some of these scripts supposed to like help you out here?
Well, when they're in the cellar at the end, that's how they finish it off. I will tell you about it behind. But that is the point of the power of prayer when something's been blessed.
Did we give an overall review?
I can give it overall. Go ahead. What do you have overall?
3. I mean, it's honestly not a lot of these scary movies impress me.
Of course, honey. Nothing scares you.
Same old. Like,
okay. I'll probably have to give it a 3, which is about where it's rated from what I've seen on other outlets. It's popular. The effects are there. It's just that when you're trying to fill me in on what you thought I missed, sometimes it can slow down the movie. It doesn't take away from the great scare scenes that are prolonged that you gave me, or the story that you're trying to give me the history lesson with too. It's just that trying to fill us in on things that we may not have caught can sometimes just slow down the movie. But yeah, guys, it's spooky season in full effect for us. Please let us know if there are other scary movies you would like us to actually review. Again, you guys know my backstory, so I really wasn't allowed to watch all these movies till I was like 14 or 15. So
you haven't seen Beetlejuice, have you?
I have not
We're
seen
gonna
Beetlejuice.
watch that tonight.
All right, apparently we'll be watching Beetlejuice, guys. Anyway, again, let us know what you want to review, and for the Shiro and E.G.O, we're out.
Bye.